All right, we will begin. Good afternoon, folks. Thanks for joining us in the Bullpen Theater. We also thank the folks that are joining us on Facebook Live. My name is Bruce Marcuson. I work in the Education Department here at the Hall of Fame, and it's almost always my pleasure to introduce the authors that we have here during the course of the summer. We brought back our author series in 2022 after really not having author events here in the Bullpen the last 2 years. And today we're very glad to have with us an old friend, Dan Schlossberg, who is, to say the least, a prolific writer. He has written 40 baseball books during the course of his career. I know people in my family that haven't even read 40 books in their life, but he has written 40 plus. I think I've read 40 books, maybe a little bit more than that, but and I've certainly read a number of Dan's books as well. He's been writing going back to the 1970s. Just to give you a little personal history, Dan and I think we first met in the early 2000s. I think it might have been at an author series event. But then we really got to know each other in 2004, Dan, when the Jewish Baseball Weekend took place here. That was a one-time event that we had. We had former major leaguers like Ron Blomberg, Mike Epstein, Elliot Maddox. They were all here. And it was a wonderful celebration of Jewish major league players. It's something that I hope we end up doing at some point in the near future, but it was a tremendous event. And Dan and I spent some time together during that weekend. I believe, Dan, you covered the event and went to see a number of the talks. So Dan and I have known each other going on about 20 years at this point in time. He has participated in our author series several times in the past. And his relatively new book has a new edition, When the Braves Rule the Diamond, 14 Flags over Atlanta. And it was updated to include last year's 2021 World Championship. The Braves got off to a terrible start in 2021. They looked nothing like a playoff team. They ended up going on this tremendous second half run, not only made the postseason, but they ran the table, they won the World Series. It was an incredible feat, considering that arguably their best player, Ronald Acuna, was injured for all of that second half run, but they found a way to win it. So Dan has included a chapter in this book, this revised edition, about the 2021 team. He's going to talk about that team, but also about the Braves' dominance during the 1990s and the 2000s, the Bobby Cox, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, Chipper Jones era of Braves history. So please join me in welcoming, once again, to the author series, our friend Dan Schlossberg.
Hi guys, thank you for coming, appreciate it. I'm going to have a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation today and also talk about both teams. The interesting thing about the 2021 team, Hank Aaron passed away in January. He wore number 44. After he died, they emblazoned the numerals 44 into the center field grass. The 2021 Braves won 44 games during the first half of the season. They won 44 games during the second half of the season. And as you know, the All-Star game was taken away from Atlanta early in the year because of the new voting law in Georgia that Major League Baseball thought was discriminatory. So that was unfortunate because the tribute that they had planned for Hank Aaron at the All-Star game in Atlanta would have been spectacular. Okay, I'm going to start and show you some of these things. This is primarily now the PowerPoint, primarily about the team that won 14 straight. Now that record, that streak, to me, is the team equivalent of Cal Ripken's consecutive games playing streak. Think about it, nobody's come close to winning 14 straight division titles. The current Braves have won 4 straight, and they're trying for number 5. Now what's interesting, the parallel here, the last team, the team that won 14 straight titles, in their 4th year, they won the World Championship. The current Braves, in their streak of 4 straight, in their 4th year, they won the World Championship. Coincidence? I don't think so. I think these Braves are getting stronger. When the Mets fans tell you that Scherzer is coming back, DeGrom is coming back, true. Scherzer pitched great last night for the Mets. The Braves have Mike Soroka coming back, an all-star pitcher, all-star starting pitcher. They have Kirby Yates joining the team after Tommy John surgery. He stayed 41 games in 2019 for San Diego. Tyler Matzik is back already. Eddie Rosario is back already. Ozzie Albies, an all-star second baseman, comes back next month. So lots of guys are coming back to the Braves too. Okay, let's take a look at the 14 straight and look at some of the interesting things about that. The original title of this book was 14 Flags. Publisher liked when the Braves ruled the diamond, and we still worked in 14 flags anyway. World Series champions 1995 and of course 2021. And look at all those divisional championships. Lots of them. Cal Ripken Jr., I mentioned, the Ironman, all those consecutive games played. But look at Ripken's record. He was interrupted by many work stoppages. Lou Gehrig never had that. So to me, Lou Gehrig's record was more significant because it was really consecutive. Ripken had a lot of time off. Okay, the chop shop. People think that may be disrespectful to Native Americans. That's up to you to decide. But they did go from worst to first in 1991. They were the first National League team ever to do that, and the Minnesota Twins did the same in the American League the same year. This is Turner Field. It just shows you all the flags. Different colors indicate when it was a World Series win, a pennant, a division. But in the 90s, the Braves won 5 pennants, and that's more than any other team. That includes the Yankees, by the way. Okay, here we have all the Hall of Famers. Not all, actually, because John Schuerholz is not here. And Chipper Jones is not here. But on the left, 2014, class of 2014, Tom Glavine, Bobby Cox, Greg Maddux. The following year, we had John Smoltz. And then after that, we had John Schuerholz, the general manager, and then Chipper Jones. So there were 6 Braves in 5 years. That is a pretty impressive thing to do. And the 3 Brave starters, Maddux, Glavine, and Smoltz, they're the only trio of starters who were together for at least a decade that made the Baseball Hall of Fame. No other team can say that. Here's Chipper's number retirement. He looks pretty happy about that. Almost as happy as he did when he found out he made the Hall of Fame. And here you have Terry Pendleton. Terry Pendleton really started this whole thing off. The Braves signed him as a free agent for the 1991 season. He had batted .230 for the Cardinals the year before with 6 home runs. Next thing you know, he wins the batting title and the National League MVP award. And that really made the difference for the Braves. Here's Andrew Jones, who really should be in this building, not just on the screen. Interesting thing about Andrew Jones, he won 10 consecutive Gold Gloves. There are only 4 other outfielders who did that. 3 of them are already in the Hall of Fame. The other one is Ichiro, who is certain to get into the Hall of Fame. Why not Andrew too? Plus all the home runs he hit. Andrew, by the way, holds a single season record for the Atlanta Braves with 51 home runs. No other Brave has ever hit 50. Here's Gary Sheffield, also a key man. He only played with the Braves for 2 years, but during that time, he set the Braves single season RBI record. 132 RBIs that broke Hank Aaron's old record. So he holds the club record for RBIs. And by the way, Sheffield also should be here in this building. Here's Javi Lopez, a 3-time All-Star. More home runs in one season than any other catcher. Fred Mcgriff, 493 home runs. Why is he not in this building? That's as many as Lou Gehrig hit. Remember, Mcgriff, like Cal Ripken, had a lot of time off because of work stoppages. He would have hit way over 500. And that's usually the benchmark for getting into the Hall of Fame. Andres Galarraga, a great free agent signing by the Braves. Even though he lost a year with lymphoma, he's still a tremendous competitor, a great contributor to the Braves. David Justice, number 23, now worn by Michael Harris, by the way, who's probably going to be the National League Rookie of the Year. You heard it here first. He might go to the All-Star game, and he'll probably win a Gold Glove, too. Not bad for a kid who's the youngest man in the major leagues. Just turned 21. Rafael Furcal was Rookie of the Year when he came up. He jumped from Class A to the major leagues. Shortstop with a great arm, and he could run. That's some power, too. Ron Gant. Ron Gant had 2 30-30 seasons. Pretty rare these days. That means 30 home runs, 30 stolen bases in the same year. Gant was a second baseman who couldn't field. They put him in the outfield, and he was terrific because he had a lot of speed. Here we have the covers of some magazines that I wrote for. On the left, I'll tell you a great story about that Greg Maddux cover with Legend Sports Memorabilia. I showed it to the Braves PR man, and he said, "That's terrific. Why don't we go show it to Greg?" So I said, "Do you think you can get Greg to sign it?" Now, if you're a writer, you're not supposed to ask for autographs. But if you're with the PR guy, that's a totally different story. So Maddux also had a reputation for signing the most illegible autograph. You can't even tell it's his name. But he saw this cover, and he said, "That's beautiful. I love it. Would you like me to sign it?" And I said, "No, I wouldn't like it." "Of course I'd like you to sign it." So he wrote the most legible Greg Maddux I've ever seen. It's so legible that nobody would believe that he actually wrote it. But he did. He did it right in front of me. Took his time and signed a beautiful one. And there's David Justice in the middle and also on the far right. Here we have some baseball cards. John Smoltz, Javi Lopez, Andrew Jones. That's L.W. Jones is Larry Wayne. That's Chipper. And there you have Smoltz again on the right. But I love all these cards. That's why I put this in the collection here. Now there's Bobby and Leo. Now, if you want to know why Bobby is frowning, it's because he told me he hated Leo's rocking. Leo would always rock on the bench because he was nervous. Bobby always would sit next to Leo, and Leo would rock, and Bobby hated it. But he never said anything because he didn't want to upset the apple cart. Now here he's happy. They just won a game, so he's happy here. But here he's arguing with the umpire. Now, I did Al Clark's book. Al Clark was an umpire for 26 years. And I did his book with him. And I said, "How many times did you throw Bobby Cox out?" Bobby was ejected 158 times. Al said, "I never threw him out." I said, "What are you talking about? You never threw him out." He said, "Bobby and I had an understanding. We're both old school guys, and he knew there were certain words he couldn't say. I never threw him out." Kind of interesting. The Jones boys. Chipper did win the MVP. Andrew should have won. The year that Albert Pujols won, which I believe was 2001, maybe? I thought Jones should have won. Andrew finished second that year to Albert Pujols. Very close vote. We saw this one already. There's John Schuerholz, who wrote his own book, Built to Win. He got into the Hall of Fame eventually, 2018. One of two general managers to win the World Series in both leagues. The other one was Pat Gillick, also in the Hall of Fame. Now this is interesting because Kent Mercker was the only pitcher on the Braves staff in that 14-year run who had a no-hitter, and he's involved in two of them. One of them was this combined no-hitter with Pena and Wohlers, and the other one, Mercker, had a complete game no-hitter against the Dodgers. Maddux, Glavine, and Smoltz never pitched a no-hitter, none of those three. Kind of an oddity. And here you have one of my favorite guys, quote-unquote, John Rocker. I was in the Braves clubhouse when nobody would talk to Rocker. His teammates shunned him. They just wouldn't have anything to do with him. John Schuerholz said Rocker had $1 million arm and a 10-cent head. He was a good relief pitcher, left-hander, threw it really hard. But the Braves had to trade him away because he was just a cancer in the clubhouse. And fans from the opposing teams, especially the Mets, would throw all kinds of debris at him when he was in the bullpen. Anybody know what this is?
Sid Bream.
Sid Slide, yes, there was a book called Sid Slide. This was the best game I ever saw in my life. The last game of the 1992 NLCS, Francisco Cabrera, who had 10 at-bats for the entire season, 3 for 10, came up as a pinch hitter, 2 outs, 9th inning, Braves down 2-1, he got a 2-run single, and Sid, the slowest man in the league, slid home just ahead of the throw because Barry Bonds' one weakness was his throwing arm. And the throw was a little bit late and up the line. So that was a pennant-winning run. I covered that game for UPI. It was 2-0 Pittsburgh going to the bottom of the 9th inning. Whomever won that game would go on to the World Series. I figured the Pirates were going to win, but I was sent down to cover the Braves clubhouse in Atlanta. And I was outside the clubhouse watching on a monitor about as big as that camera back there, maybe smaller. There was a girl from WSB television who had the monitor, and she let me share the eyepiece with her, and I saw it I saw what happened. So then I went to the Braves clubhouse, and there was only one person there, Jane Fonda. So I said, Jane, what are you doing here? She said, well, Ted is out in the field with the guys, and I didn't want to get under the pile. So Jane was waiting for Ted in the clubhouse. Now, you might remember this umpire, Eric Gregg, who has passed away, and it's not nice to say anything negative about somebody who's passed away, but suffice to say he could not see his own strike zone. You might remember the 1997 playoffs against the Marlins, where Ivan Hernandez struck out 15 Braves, and the Marlins won 2-1, beating Greg Maddux. That was because Eric Gregg was the home plate umpire and kept calling pitches balls that were actually strikes. And so it was difficult. And Bobby Cox is pointing out the error of his ways. And there's Fred Mcgriff there too, on the right. Okay, here we have a collection of people who were involved with other things during the time the Braves were doing their streak. Jane Fonda on the far left, Sarah Palin next to her, Dolly Parton next to her, and Lyndon Johnson was still kicking too, barely. And he passed away during the 14-year streak. Western Division champions. Remember, the Braves started off in the National League West. In 1993, they had a fantastic divisional race with the Giants. The Braves were 10.5 games back in July. They caught the Giants, and on the very last day of the season, they won, and the Dodgers beat the Giants. Braves won 104 games that year. Giants won 103 games that year, and the Braves went on to the playoffs. Giants went home. It was because of that race that we have divisional play and wild cards. They created it so that could never happen again. So a team with 103 wins would not go home. Leo Mazzoni, he's another one who should be in this building and not on the screen. Pitching coach. Leo Mazzoni, Bobby Cox, and John Smoltz were the only 3 people who wore Braves uniforms for the entire 14-year streak. Unfortunately, there are no coaches in the Baseball Hall of Fame. That needs to be corrected. Not Johnny Zane, not Leo Mazzoni, not Dave Duncan. That needs to be corrected. Sorry, Bruce. Here he is again, showing his picture. Here's where I'm going for dinner tonight, and this is what I'm going to order. And what else are you going to say? Pitcher knows what to do. Okay. Leo Mazzoni's book cover, one of his books. He's done several. He advocated throwing twice between starts. And Glavine and Maddux, who were there before, Glavine and Smoltz, who were there before Maddux got there, said, oh, that's not a good idea. My arm is already sore. It's going to be worse throwing twice. And they found out that it really did help. And now a lot of pitching coaches have adopted that theory. Throw twice between starts. There's Mazzoni again. And that looks like Rocker to me on the left. Here's Smoltz and Mazzoni. Smoltz made Mazzoni very happy. Smoltz had the best stuff on the staff. Always a threat to throw a no-hitter anytime he started. And I was at a game in Philadelphia at Veterans Stadium that Smoltz pitched, and he had a no-hitter to the bottom of the 9th inning. And I knew he was going to lose at that inning. Lenny Dykstra was due up. Lenny Dykstra got a clean base hit. So Smoltz said afterward, I didn't eat before this game. I always eat before the game. This time I didn't. I was starving out there, and that's why I didn't have enough energy to get the rest of the no-hitter. Turner Field, see all the pennants? There are more now. Even dogs like the Braves. Book cover. And we're back to the beginning, but I have a whole bunch of things I'd like to share with you about the Braves. Schlossberg wrote a book called Starting and Closing. Really interesting book. It tells how he went from starter to closer and back to starter. He had more combination of wins and saves than any other pitcher, including Dennis Eckersley. Eckersley had the record, but now Smoltz has it. Smoltz also has a National League record for saves in a season with 55. Quite a lot of saves. Andres Galarraga missed the 1999 season with lymphoma. The Braves always seem to have a way of having somebody out with a really severe injury. Last year was a good example with Acuna. And this year with Ozzy, but there's always something going on. Look at Mike Soroka. Mike Soroka tore his Achilles twice. He tore it once. He was about to come back, and then he hurt his shoulder, and that delayed him, and then he tore his Achilles just when he was about to come back again. But now he's allegedly getting ready to come back. Got to mention Otis Nixon. Otis Nixon once stole 6 bases in a game, a National League record, and 72 in a season, a Braves record. But, and this is the key but, 1991, he was suspended for steroids in September. He missed the postseason. The Braves would have trounced Minnesota in that World Series if they had Otis Nixon. He was the key man. He was the leadoff man. He wasn't there. People forget about that. In that Francisco Cabrera game that we just mentioned, the home plate umpire was John McSherry, another very heavy-set umpire. He was replaced by Randy Marsh, who was a great ball and strike umpire, midway through the game. Had that not happened, I think Sid Green would have been called out at home. That would have made the difference there. So Randy Marsh really was a terrific home plate umpire. Doug Drabeck in that same game threw 129 pitches. That's a lot of pitches for a Game 7 after you pitched the whole season too. Maddox and Glavine had 21 seasons in 1993. They were the first Braves tandem since Warren Spahn and Lou Burdette in 1959. First tandem of 20-game winners. Shows you how rare those things are. The 1993 Braves had 4 15-game winners. First time that happened in the modern era. Steve Avery was the other guy with that. 1993 Braves also went 13-0 versus the expansion Colorado Rockies. If not for that team and that 13-0 streak, the Braves wouldn't have won by 1 game. They won 104 games. 13 of those were against the Rockies. They never lost to the Rockies that year. The Giants won 14 of their last 17 games. Not enough. Just wasn't enough. The Braves got Fred McGriff that year, middle of the season from San Diego, and he made a huge difference, tremendous difference. 6 teams led by Bobby Cox. 6 teams won over 100 games. Shows what a great manager he was. Galarraga hit 44 home runs his first year in Atlanta. Everybody said, oh, in Colorado you can hit 44 home runs. They'll never do the same in Atlanta. Hit the exact same number of home runs in Atlanta. Smoltz missed the 2000 season with Tommy John surgery. And that's when he became a closer because he didn't want him to pitch that many innings as a starter. And he was a great closer. And then he went back to starting a few years later. Ted Turner was married to Jane Fonda, as mentioned a minute ago. But did you remember that David Justice was married to Halle Berry? The Braves were like little Hollywood. In 2003, Mike Hampton won the Gold Glove. Maybe not significant, but it was to Greg Maddux because that Gold Glove by Hampton interrupted a streak by Maddux of 18 in a row. So it's kind of interesting. Hampton, by the way, was the only pitcher to win the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger in the same season. Schuerholz, when Maddux, Glavine, and Smoltz left, Schuerholz brought in Russ Ortiz, John Thompson, Jarrett Wright. Jarrett Wright was the team's best starter in 2004, and they won the division every year. Andrew Jones, 10 straight Gold Gloves. I mentioned Gary Sheffield, 132 RBIs. Now this was bad, what they did. The Braves made a trade. After Gary Sheffield left, the Braves made a trade a few months later with the Cardinals for J.D. Drew. Now, Drew had a great year, his best year of his career with the Braves. But he was only there for 1 year and then became a free agent again. The guy the Braves traded away for Drew, do you remember? Still playing.
Adam Wainwright.
Adam Wainwright is correct.
Wow.
Adam Wainwright was the Braves' #1 prospect. They put him in the trade along with Ray King and Jason Marquis for J.D. Drew. Terrible trade. And I was at the winter meeting sitting next to Bobby Cox when that trade was announced. And I said, I don't believe you did that, Bobby. I don't believe it. There was a lot of arguing by the team's brass. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. 2010, Chipper tore his ACL in August. That's another one of the devastating injuries because he missed the postseason and the Braves lost the playoffs. He was replaced by Brooke Jacoby, I believe.
Conrad. Wasn't it?
Brooks Conrad. You're right. Brooks Conrad. And he was pretty bad. We had a lot of errors in the playoffs. Truist Park opened as SunTrust Park. In 2018, Acuna reached the major leagues. Hit record 8 home runs as a leadoff man, won the Rookie of the Year. He was one of 4 regulars in 2018, 24 years old or younger. Smith Curry, the oldest manager, had the youngest team last year. He was manager of the year in 2018. When the team won 90 after losing 93 years in a row, the only other team to do that, the Braves, of course, 1991. The Braves won 23 straight starts by Chris Medlin during the streak. That's a major league record. Nobody remembers Chris Medlin. He was called the poor man's Greg Maddux. The 2020 team, the Braves scored 29 runs in a game. That's a National League record. Remember that game?
Yep.
29 runs in a game. I think that was a game Duvall had 3 home runs, I think. Okay. 2021. Oh, in 2020, no Atlanta starter had ever started a playoff game. So all of their starters in the 2020 playoffs were novices. None of them had ever started, and that includes Max Fried. He had never started a playoff game. He pitched in relief, but he never started a playoff game. So Acuna tore his ACL on July 10th, out for the season. The Braves, the first world champion to linger 111 days under 500. That is a losing record for 111 days last year. But then Freeman and Rosario hit for the cycle. All 4 infielders had at least 25 home runs. They got 59 home runs from players who worked with the team on opening day. And Freddie hit 5 playoff home runs to tie Mcgriff's club record in the playoffs. In 9 of their 11 postseason wins, now get this, the Braves allowed 2 runs or less in 9 of their 11 postseason wins. Shows how good their pitching was. And in the World Series, Braves hit 11 home runs. The Astros hit 2, both by Jose Altuve. That was it. Heavy hitting Astros. Rosario in the NLCS, catch these numbers. Batted .560 in 6 games, 14 for 25, .607 on base percentage, 1.040 OPS. 6 runs scored, 9 RBIs. Just amazing. And Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, his quote was, "We couldn't get the guy out." True. Chipper and Willie Stargell. Chipper once said he picked up my bat and said, "Son, I picked my teeth with bigger pieces of wood than this." He suggested I swing with the heaviest bat I could get around on a 90-mile-an-hour heater. I swung that heavy bat until the day I retired. And Cox, the Sporting News named him Manager of the Year 8 times. In 29 years, all but 4 with the Braves, he won 15 divisions, 5 pennants, a world championship, and a wild card title. And that explains why he's in the Hall of Fame. In 146 years of Braves baseball, the team has 18 pennants, 27 playoff appearances, and 4 world champions. And Cooperstown, we mentioned 6 guys in 5 years, pretty impressive. Chipper said he became a switch hitter because of Mickey Mantle. He was the reason my dad made me a switch hitter at such an early age. In retired numbers, there are tons of them. Aaron, 44, Cox, 6, Murphy, 3. Murphy should be in the Hall of Fame, Dale Murphy. Glavine, 47, Chipper, 10, Smoltz, 29, Matthews, 41, Necro, 35, Spahn, 21, and soon to come this year, Andrew Jones, 25. And I'm hoping that they will retire Max Fried's number. Max Fried wears Leo Mazzoni's number. So I'm hoping they will retire that number 54 also. And they could consider retiring Mcgriff's 27. He was certainly a very important guy to the Braves. Does anybody have any questions about the Braves or what they've done or what they might do this year or anything at all? Yes, sir.
Did Cox reply to you when you asked him about the trade? When you said like, "Oh, what are you doing? Like, that wasn't you" or something? Did he like say anything back about the Wainwright trade? When you were
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing.
when you were with him at the winter meetings and you mentioned the trade to him.
Oh,
And did he like? What did he say back?
he immediately said, we had a lot of hemming and hawing and arguing during our meetings to consider this trade. For that very reason, they didn't want to trade Wainwright. Wainwright was by far the number 1 prospect. He would have come up the next year. Can you imagine if the Braves had kept Wainwright all these years? How many World Series they would have won? So they really needed an ace pitcher, although, I mean, when you have Jarrett Wright as your number 1 pitcher, and John Thompson,
Yeah.
Russ Ortiz did win 21 games 1 year.
Dan, I was curious about Bobby Cox. Now, you had him right to forward.
You wrote the forward, yes.
his health has suffered in recent years. He had a stroke. His speaking, unfortunately, is a little bit limited. But I know you've gotten to know him over the years, and obviously one of the great managers of the expansion era. What do you think it is about Cox that, I'm sure there are several qualities, but if there's one or two qualities that really had helped make him successful with the Braves, what do you think that they were?
Well, one of the things that Cox initiated was no music in the clubhouse, which is a really good thing. A lot of teams have blaring music in the clubhouse. That music is going to upset some figment of the clubhouse. Whatever music they play to suit one or two guys, it's going to offend somebody else. Cox said, this is a business. It's going to be a business-like clubhouse. You're here to concentrate on the game. No music in the clubhouse. The Braves still do not allow music in the clubhouse. You can have headphones. You cannot have loud, blaring music, as many teams do. And I think that was a big thing. And people respected Bobby. Bobby would never say anything negative about a player to the media, never throw anybody under the bus. He was always very supportive.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, in baseball you have a lot of guys who are country western fans.
Yep.
And you got guys who like rap, they like top 40, they like old time rock and roll.
And they're Latino guys.
Yeah, and you know, something you might think music somewhat trivial, but it can actually be a divisive force in a clubhouse if you've got all these different interests. Kind of reminds me of Albert Bell with the Indians. He was notoriously called Mr. Freeze because he wanted the air conditioner at full blast. And it felt like 30 degrees in the clubhouse. And the other guys were like, this is ridiculous. But Bell was the star of the team, and he felt he should have his way. And that may have led to some frustration. Any other questions for Dan? Yeah, go back.
Yeah, I know with Freddie Freeman's recent return to Atlanta, a lot of stuff came up about the deal with him going to the Dodgers. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Yes, I do. I blame the 99-day lockout because during that time, players and owners were not allowed to talk to each other. That time frame would have been exactly when contract could have been worked out. The problem, as I see it, is that Freeman's agent gave Alex Anthopoulos a 1-hour ultimatum. Here's what we'll take. You have 1 hour to give us your answer. And Anthopoulos turned around and picked up the phone and called the Oakland A's and got Matt Olson. Because it was just ridiculous. You don't threaten your general manager. You're the face of the franchise. Freeman made a major mistake in not taking charge of negotiations himself. He said he never talked to Alex the whole time.
That's pretty unusual, right?
Yeah, it is.
Any other questions for Dan?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what year John Sherholtz took over as general manager of Braves?
Yes, after the 1990 season.
Okay.
So his first year was 1991.
Okay. So who was
Bobby Cox was GM before that.
okay, so he's responsible for probably those drafts that got those
Yes, he
seeded.
wanted to rebuild with pitching, and he did.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Also, in 93, they had a choice between, after 92 season, they had a choice between signing Barry Bonds or Greg Maddux. They could not afford both. And they went round and round and round, and they picked Maddux, and I think they made the right move.
You've
Bonds-
interviewed John
Bonds is good.
Sherholtz? You've interviewed Sherholtz?
Oh, many times.
Yeah,
In fact, I actually asked him to write the forward before I asked Bobby.
really.
And John said, ask Bobby.
Yeah.
Okay.
I met him once at the Otisanga. It struck me as just such a highly intelligent,
Yes.
thoughtful guy, and I guess not surprising the success that he's had.
Now, he's an intellectual guy. Bobby's a baseball guy.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
sir.
real quick, you mentioned Bobby Cox got ejected 158 times. Is that a record for Major
Yes.
League Baseball?
158 during regular season, plus 3 more in the postseason.
Wow.
Never by Al Clark, which is amazing. Just amazing. Al Clark, I got to tell you this story because it's a great story. I told Bruce over lunch today. Al Clark once threw out Frank Robinson during the national anthem. So I said, how can you do that? Al said, I had a rule. If you have an argument one day, the next day you come to the ballpark, your slate is clean. So Frank was managing the Indians, comes out, Guardians now, comes out to home plate, picks up the argument. He's arguing, and the national anthem goes on. So Al goes, you're out of here, in the middle of the national anthem. So I said, okay, Al, what happened? He said, the league fined us and reprimanded us. I said, Al, if you had to do it over again, what would you do? He said, I went to the damn song ended.
Dan has written a book with Al Clark. He has written books on broadcasters like Milo Hamilton. He did a book that's really interesting called Designated Hebrew about Ron Bloomberg, the first designated hitter in Major League history, and a guy who's Jewish and was here for that Jewish baseball weekend that I referenced earlier.
Yes.
So when you've written 40 books, you cover a lot of different topics within the game. I want to thank Dan for coming out. I want to remind everybody that we're now going to head out into the atrium. If you'd like to purchase a copy of the book, this is the soft cover new edition, which includes a chapter on the 2021 team. It is available for purchase in the bookstore, and then Dan will be happy to sign, personalize any copies of the book in the atrium. Please join me in thanking Dan for Thank everybody for joining us on Facebook Live and also here at the Bullpen Theater. And if you can, come out to the atrium. We'd love to have you. Thanks.